Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in this video we're going to be talking about PulseChain, its native token Pulse, the Pumpamentals, to why I see this project could be the opportunity of a lifetime, never before seen in crypto the way this is playing out, right? So I have about 10 bullet points over here that I want to touch on, and I'll do my best to not only touch on them, but bridge between them as seamlessly as I can, and at the end give you an overall view of my stance on PulseChain. Okay, so with that said, leave a thumbs up if you enjoy this kind of cutting edge PulseChain content, game theory, and more. Be subscribed by the end of the video if you aren't already, and let's go ahead and talk about PulseChain. So we'll start off by saying that there are plenty of resources out there if you want a kind of a ground level approach to what PulseChain is, because we're going to be assuming that you know not a lot, but a certain amount of things, and we'll touch on things that aren't super clear that I wouldn't expect you to be, informed on. But there are plenty of resources out there, such as PulseChain.com, which links directly to the Telegram group with over 17,000 members or so. Plenty of them there would be happy to answer your questions, so just go ahead and check that out, and then come back if you're not familiar with kind of what PulseChain is from the ground up. So let's go ahead and start with PulseChain's consensus mechanism, right? So it's a proof of stake consensus mechanism, whereas something like Bitcoin is proof of work. And even Ethereum is currently proof of work, albeit it wastes less energy. That's a whole other topic in and of itself. But proof of stake is essentially, it aligns incentives, right? Because with something like Bitcoin, where you have a proof of work consensus mechanism, you don't necessarily have aligned incentives. And what do I mean by that? I mean, economically speaking, because miners receive Bitcoin rewards via the Bitcoin inflation, right, for securing the network, for producing blocks, whereas in something like proof of stake, the block producers, they get the rewards as well, right? But the difference is in Bitcoin, what do you need to have to print those rewards? It's effectively just mining hardware, right? So there's this argument made that you're just really harming the environment and enriching foreign electricity companies. Okay, that's kind of a strange proof of work, but we'll leave that for another video, I guess. With proof of stake, right? Your stake in the system, your economic mass that you have staked in the system, you have to be a majority holder, a top X holder of that coin to be able to produce blocks. And so when you get your rewards, whether they're from inflation, like in Bitcoin, or whether they're from just fees, like in PulseChain, then you have an incentive to hold them and not just dump them on market, right? Because Bitcoin miners, in theory, could just mine Bitcoin and just continuously dump it and never really hold, and it's just sort of passive income for them, right? Like, the only incentive a miner would have to hold in Bitcoin is speculation, whereas the incentive for a block producer in PulseChain to hold would be, well, they actually have incentive because they have to hold the coins to be a block producer. See what I mean? So the proof of stake is incentive alignment, and it removes that negative externality of dumping your rewards on market. Hence, sure, you're securing the chain, but you're just continuously dumping its native token. So that's one pumpamental of PulseChain that gives incentives for block producers to actually hold onto their coins, therefore holding up the price if there's less sell pressure. I hope that makes sense. Or since there's less sell pressure, right? Okay, so that touches on a few points, right? That touches specifically on the idea that if you caught it in Bitcoin, you get inflation rewards on Bitcoin's inflation, just printing new coins. Whereas in PulseChain, this proof of stake system specifically, you will not get inflation rewards because there will be 0% inflation. It's not going to inflate at all, but rather, these validators, these block producers, and also stakers who delegate their stake to these validators / block producers will be able to earn rewards not on inflation from staking their coins, but rather from fees. So only transaction fees. So you'll still have your fee market, right? But a certain percentage of that will be allocated to rewards versus something like inflation. So instead of printing new coins, you're just using the fee economy over here as your sort of rewards pool, if that makes sense. So that's another pumpamental, I believe. And yeah, I have a haircut appointment for Tuesday, by the way. So excited. So excited. So much less to worry about. All right, so 0% inflation over here on PulseChain is a Pumpamental because there's less supply, right? It's going to be a more scarce asset at the end of the day than something that inflates, right? And we'll get into something else which suggests that Pulse will be a deflationary currency because not only will it have 0% inflation, rewards only coming from the fee market, but we're going to have fee burning as well, where 25% of transaction fees will simply be burnt. So over time, there will actually be less and less supply. So the supply curve is going to look pretty interesting, right? You're going to go from 0 to, I believe, a little over 1 trillion coins because we're just 10,000 Xing the Ether supply. So that puts you at around 1.15 trillion units. So Pulse. Right, 1.15 trillion, a little over a trillion, let's just say. So you're going to go from 0 to when the mainnet goes live, a little over a trillion, and then you're just never going to print more after that. 0% inflation, and those coins will slightly be burnt over time as fees take place, and that fee market itself will also fund the proof of stake incentive aligned consensus mechanism. All right, let's go ahead and touch on a few more points I have here. So we touched on proof of stake, we touched on 0% inflation, fee burning, and the fact that we're actually beating ETH 2.0 to market, right? Because they're going to have fee burning in July, I believe, with Ethereum improvement proposal 1559. However, it's interesting that PulseChain is attempting to beat, like if mainnet goes live before the end of July, maybe we'll beat ETH 2.0 to market with fee burning. But if not, that's okay because PulseChain is going to be a fully proof of stake consensus mechanism blockchain. Goddamn, that's a mouthful. When it goes live, whereas on Ethereum, we're still waiting for Ethereum 2.0. Or in a recent interview Vitalik did with Lex, he said he kind of wanted to lean away from the branding of ETH 2.0. So maybe they're just keeping it as Ethereum. Not too sure about that, but essentially, instead of having to wait for a fully proof of stake consensus mechanism blockchain, Ethereum 2.0 claims it's going to be, you can just have PulseChain. So PulseChain is effectively beating ETH to market with a consensus mechanism, maybe not with the fee burning, but it's still a big deal, in my opinion, to beat Ethereum to market with literally anything. So those are some Pumpamentals that I think might help appreciation. Might, again, none of this is financial advice or generic disclaimer for this video. I just feel like I need to say that, right? Because these videos are really, again, I'll present to you my case, tell you why I think the way I think about certain things, and also usually provide you with the resources to go and check that out for yourself so you can come up with your own conclusions and either agree with me or challenge me and come up with your own rationale for that. So at the end of the day, that sort of logical approach, I think, will get you the farthest in not only crypto, but a lot of areas. Without ranting too much on that, we touched on plenty of points, and there's one actually, here's a bonus if you stuck around this long. It's kind of an Easter egg that I don't know if a lot of you actually know about, but maybe a few of you. So this is going to be a nice little Easter egg, okay? The fact that we're going to need a bridge, right? Because this is a completely different blockchain. It's not like you can trade your native Pulse on an Ethereum chain like your ERC20s, because it's not going to be an ERC20. Rather, it's going to be its own chain with its own native token. And with that said, you need some sort of wrapped mechanism. So just the same as Bitcoin being its own chain, you can still trade it on Ethereum via wrapped Bitcoin. And trustless bridges are an innovation and a hurdle in and of themselves. But I have a good, I predict that with the development of PulseChain, we'll probably see some of the world's most trustless coin-to-coin bridges. Just a hunch, right? Nothing to take to the bank, but that's just a hunch. So we're going to need bridges. And if you heard in Richard Hart's recent live stream, he was mentioning how there are potential advantages of just having a rather than multiple bridges for all PRC20s to ERC20 pairs and so on, it's potentially advantageous for the appreciation of Pulse itself to just have a single checkpoint, so like a single bridge. I'm guessing it would be native token to native token. It makes the most sense for something like an ETH Pulse bridge. I think that's going to be the main, if not one of the only bridges that there is going to be. And why is that a Pumpamental? Well, because to get into the Pulse ecosystem, the PulseChain ecosystem, to get onto that chain, essentially, you either need to be able to claim the free coins via the sacrifice period. So the sort of, and we'll touch on that later, right? So you'll either have to participate in the sacrifice set, and then you'll immediately have your Pulse over here, or just holding ERC20s, you'll have your copied ERC20s on the Pulse chain as PRC20s. So, but for anyone else who, let's say, is new and wants to get into the Pulse ecosystem, or even if you're not new, let's just say you didn't realize it was such a big opportunity, and so you actually want to put in fresh capital or whatever, you want to maybe transfer your ERC20s or your ETH into Pulse or PRC20s. So in any of those scenarios, you want to get into the PulseChain ecosystem from the Ethereum ecosystem via a secure, trustless bridge, right? And I think having a Pulse ETH bridge being one of the main, again, if not the only bridge, will cause anyone who wants to bridge over to have to buy Pulse first, right? Think about that. Just think about that. If you want to get into the PulseChain ecosystem, you might not be able to route through ERC20, PRC20 pairs and kind of route around Pulse. But if there's just one main trustless secure bridge from ETH to Pulse, then I think Pulse itself has, advantages there. Okay? So the single Pulse ETH bridge is that bonus Easter egg Pumpamental that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. Okay? So wow, that's a lot of points we touched on. And obviously, with the mention of the whole sacrifice phase, I have an entire video on that and how that's actually super similar to the Ether launch, where you could sacrifice your Bitcoin for your Ether with a time bonding curve. I don't think they had a volume bonding curve, but I'm 100% sure they had a time bonding curve where, again, Ether, 42-day launch phase, first 10 days, 2,000 Ether per Bitcoin, and then it declined, I believe, linearly from there for the remaining 32, 33 days at a rate that brought you down to, at the end, 1337 Ether per Bitcoin on the bonding curve. Very similar. We will have bonding curves on PulseChain where you'll sacrifice from a list of coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, I believe USDC you can even sacrifice, maybe in USD, a list of ERC20s, some other blockchains, I believe Sol, ADA, DOT, you name it. So probably your favorite coin is on there. You'll be able to sacrifice a list of coins, very similar to the Ether launch sale. A few differences being in the Ether launch, you could only sacrifice Bitcoin, but here you'll be able to sacrifice a variety of coins. So you could argue that in and of itself, that inclusivity of onboarding is pretty powerful because the ecosystem is bigger and you're including a large set of people. That could be a Pumpamental in and of itself, but the sacrifice phase is very actually similar to the sacrifice phase for Ethereum. Like, they just didn't call it that. That's just pure nomenclature and branding. But at the end of the day, they're actually more similar than you might think. Again, check out that video if you haven't already. It's a good one. And I also mentioned some of the social layers, but I'll touch on them a little bit more here. One example being the Telegram group, PulseChain.com, t.me/PulseChain.com, already has 17,000 members. And that's pretty insane growth, right? Given that mainnet is not even live, sacrifice phase is not even open, people haven't even seen what this thing can do, and there are already almost 20K members in the chat. So that in and of itself is a Pumpamental, in my opinion, on a social layer where you see real demand here, and you can speculate on, how many of those, let's say it's 20,000 members by the time sacrifice phase goes live. How many of those 20,000 people will participate? Okay, you have your conversion fraction. Let's say it's 30%, just pulling a number out of thin air. Okay, 6,000 people are participating. what's the average amount of economic energy each person is going to put in? Average 2,000, just throwing it out there. Okay, 2,000 times 6,000, $12 million. Okay, there's already $12 million of pent up energy waiting to be chucked at Pulse. Give me, take my money. You've seen the memes. Just take my money. Yeah. So plenty of demand there on the social layer, and a few little more bonus Easter eggs if you stuck around this long. There's a recent interview between Vitalik Buterin and Lex Fridman. A lot of you are aware potentially who Lex Fridman is. I've actually been a fan of him for a long time now. So when I when I saw Richard saying he was gonna go on his podcast at some point, I just fanboyed out, and I even sent a video to one of my friends. We're both huge fans, and we were just like, oh my god, this is happening. I think he actually predicted it a while back. Not too sure about it. I'll have to ask. Anyways, what I was getting at was Vitalik was recently on a Lex interview, and he said something. I'll actually play it for you here. I saved the clip. Hopefully you can hear it. Let me pull up my OBS to make sure I get a signal while I'm playing this.
I'm pro hard fork. I think hard forks are actually, like, in a political economic sense, they're better than soft forks.
Well, let's okay. I think that's a beautiful.
So, you heard it here first. Vitalik Buterin is pro hard fork. He goes sort of into the argument of why, being with soft forks, you kind of have the client being upgraded subtly by maybe a core dev team, and people are just kind of almost coerced. I believe was his language, the words he was using. People are kind of coerced into adopting the features. Whereas in a hard fork, people have to make a decision. Whereas it's like, okay, you're either choosing this chain or this chain, right? To play on, to function on, to transact on. You don't necessarily need to pick a side by selling all your coins on one side and transferring over to the other chain. Like, you can actually evenly play it, like, just don't touch anything. Play it safe in case you're on the wrong side, right? And that's also a false binary choice, whereas one side doesn't necessarily need to win. They can both succeed in their own unique, they can each carve out their own unique niche use cases, kind of ethos of different communities, and it's both win. So there's a lot to be said there. Essentially, he says he's pro hard fork. And I kind of connected that dot with something else. Now we're getting into pure speculation, pure conspiracy kind of vibes. But in a recent Richard Hart interview, I heard Richard saying that some people who hated Hex actually love Pulse, even coin founders. So he threw a hint there. Maybe it's Vitalik, maybe not. There are other coin founders out there, obviously, but put two and two together, things are interesting. Like, and then you could even connect that. I hadn't even thought about this with the Aubrey de Grey kind of statements he was making. He who shall not be named, when he was talking to Vitalik, I think on a Zoom call, and they were kind of hinting at things of like Sense Foundation. It's interesting, right? We'll see, but I think there's a good chance this could be absolutely insane. So with that said, leave a like if you enjoy this kind of content on Pulse. Definitely be subscribed by now. This is a longer video than most. Be subscribed by now. Let's get to 2,300 subscribers. Check out my website, lookintohex.com, where I know a lot of you guys are Hex fans. I tried my best not to mention it in this video, just because, PulseChain is coin agnostic and doesn't really care about what your favorite coin is. This is attempting to do its own thing. But I do know that obviously, since we have overlap in the communities via same founder, then I did want to plug that website here at the end of it, lookintohex.com, where you can see some updated real-time quantitative and statistical analysis on the Hex charts, unique charts that I don't believe are literally anywhere else. So go ahead and check that out. Follow me on Twitter if you aren't already. There's a link to that in the description below. As always, appreciate you watching, and go PulseChain. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.